Today, I'll be explaining a recently released psychological horror film titled The Shrouds. This movie is deeply unsettling, gripping, and filled with intense psychological twists that will keep you on edge until the very end. It's chilling, unpredictable, and guaranteed to keep you hooked from start to finish. So, without wasting any time, let's dive straight into the story. The movie begins with the sight of a dead body being buried. A man is seen watching the burial closely, and suddenly, he screams out loud. We soon learn that this man was actually sitting at a dentist's clinic, getting his teeth checked. What he just witnessed was not real. It was a nightmare. This man's name is Karsh, a successful businessman, and the woman he saw being buried in his dream was none other than his late wife, Becca. Yes, the dead body he saw wasn't anyone else's, it was hers. Karsh had lost his wife Becca to cancer 4 years ago, and ever since then, he's been living under tremendous emotional stress because he loved her deeply and couldn't move on from her death. Now, as he sits in the dentist's chair, Karsh tells the doctor about his horrifying dream and why he screamed. The doctor calmly observes him and realizes that Karsh is still mentally disturbed because of his wife's death. The doctor explains that even his tooth pain could be related to his emotional grief, saying that emotions can indeed affect one's teeth. And that's actually true in real life. The doctor also tells Karsh that his wife was a very beautiful and kind woman, so it's natural for him to feel deep sorrow. Wanting to help him overcome this grief, the doctor decides to set Karsh up on a blind date, hoping it might help him start a new life and move forward from Becca's loss. Later that evening, Karsh goes on that blind date. The meeting is set in a restaurant called The Shrouds at GraveTech. Interestingly, the restaurant itself belongs to Karsh. It's one of his own ventures. When he enters, he meets a woman named Morna, who turns out to be his date. They sit down and start talking, where Karsh proudly tells Morna that the restaurant belongs to him. As their conversation goes on, he mentions that he's a wealthy businessman with no shortage of money, owning a large tech company named GraveTech, and even running a cemetery located right outside this very restaurant. As their discussion continues, Karsh opens up about his late wife Becca, how much he loved her, and how deeply he misses her. He says that when Becca was being buried, he even wished he could be buried alongside her. His emotions for her were incredibly strong and heartbreaking. Morna, feeling curious, asks him, "If you loved her that much, why didn't you cremate her?" To this, Karsh explains that his wife Becca was Jewish, and according to Jewish belief, when a person dies, their soul doesn't immediately leave the body. Becca believed that the soul stays close to the body for some time, unwilling to leave, because it spent an entire lifetime experiencing the world through that body. Therefore, it's said that the soul has a deep attachment to its earthly vessel, and only gradually does it say goodbye and ascend to heaven. That's why, in Judaism, cremation is forbidden. It's believed to disrupt that process of farewell. Karsh then tells her that his wife's grave is located right there in the cemetery outside. He takes Morna to see it, and when they arrive, she notices that every tombstone has digital screens attached to it. This was Karsh's own invention. Through these screens, people could actually see the bodies of their buried loved ones. It seemed that small cameras and sensors were installed inside the graves to enable this. Karsh leads Morna to Becca's grave, turns on the screen, and shows her something shocking. He controls the system using an app on his phone, through which he can view his wife's body in a 3D image from different angles. The image was generated using a modified shroud, embedded with tiny cameras and sensors that captured her from every perspective. Morna is both amazed and disturbed by what she sees. The idea of watching a buried body in 3D was deeply unsettling. Karsh, however, is fascinated and emotionally attached to the concept. He tells Morna that he even wishes to be buried with his wife inside the same grave someday. Hearing this, Morna feels very uncomfortable and excuses herself, saying she's going out for a smoke. Meanwhile, as she steps out, Karsh begins to do something strange. He starts inspecting the skull of his wife's body through the screen, and what happens next takes the story into a darker and more disturbing direction. He notices something strange. A round, circular bulge forming on the surface of Becca's skull, which shocks and confuses him. He stares at it in disbelief, unable to understand what it is. The scene then shifts to Karsh sitting at home, working on expanding his GraveTech program even further. He was determined to make it bigger and more successful. The next day, Karsh visits Terry, who happens to be Becca's twin sister. Karsh used to visit her quite often, since she was the only family connection left to Becca. During their conversation, Karsh shows Terry the strange bulges he noticed on Becca's body and skull, using his laptop footage. Terry looks closely and immediately points out that they look exactly like tracking devices. Karsh is shocked. He can't understand how something like that could have ended up on Becca's body. He insists that such a thing shouldn't even be possible. But Terry is confident in her observation. She tells him that those are definitely tracking implants. Terry then suggests that maybe someone is trying to track or spy on Karsh, that someone might have planted those devices for a reason. Karsh, confused, asks, "But why would anyone want to track me? Terry reminds him that he's a corporate video producer and a prominent businessman, so maybe his competitors or rivals were trying to follow him and steal his technology. While they're talking, Karsh suddenly receives a video message from one of his employees. In that footage, several of the tombstones in his cemetery had been destroyed and vandalized. Seeing this, Karsh is completely shocked and furious. He immediately rushes to meet his employee, who explains that after the restaurant closed for the night, someone broke into the cemetery and caused all this destruction. When the restaurant workers arrived the next morning, they found the entire place wrecked. The staff had asked whether they should call the police, but the employee decided against it. They didn't want any publicity or media attention. Karsh orders her to seal off all access to both the restaurant and the cemetery until everything is repaired and secured again. The employee then advises him to talk to Maury, since he could help figure out how such a breach happened. Now, Maury was actually Terry's ex-husband, meaning he had once been Becca's brother-in-law. The reason Karsh is told to contact him is because Terry herself had written the security code for GraveTech, so Maury, being familiar with her work, might be able to help. The scene then shifts to Karsh's house, where Maury arrives to meet him. They sit down to talk, and Maury first asks about Terry, how she's been doing lately. Karsh replies that she's fine, but mentions that they never talk about Maury around her, since it's a sensitive subject for Terry. Maury already knew about the vandalism incident, and Karsh had actually called him to investigate how it happened, how someone managed to breach such a highly secure system. He wanted Maury to check whether it was hacking, a system failure, or something else entirely. Together, they start reviewing the footage and data from other graves to assess the damage. According to the GraveTech system, no one was allowed to access another person's grave without proper authorization. However, Karsh admits that he had given discounted access and permission to a few people, which might have been exploited. Maury then begins working on the system, analyzing the breach, while Karsh starts talking to Honey, a virtual assistant AI modeled after Becca's appearance. Honey was designed by Maury himself, and it functioned as Karsh's intelligent digital companion, managing all his GraveTech systems. Karsh then schedules an appointment with Dr. Frack Ackler, who had been Becca's doctor when she was undergoing treatment. Later that night, Karsh experiences a terrifying hallucination. He dreams that Becca is lying beside him, alive, and wakes up saying she needs to go to Dr. Ackler's office. Through this, we realize that Karsh is starting to hallucinate Becca frequently, blurring the line between reality and his grief-driven visions. The next morning, Maury informs Karsh that he has traced the hackers' origin. They were located in Iceland. Maury discovered this from the lockout screen created by the hackers, which displayed several strange symbols belonging to Iceland. He reveals that all the servers used for the breach were based in Reykjavik, the capital of Iceland. Meanwhile, Karsh prepares to visit Dr. Ackler, but Honey, the virtual assistant, informs him that there's a problem. Dr. Ackler has gone missing. He had traveled to Reykjavik, Iceland, to attend a chemotherapy conference, but hasn't returned yet. Hearing the name Reykjavik again unsettles Karsh. This is the second time in a single day he's heard about that same place. It can't be a coincidence, and he begins to suspect that everything, the hack, the tracking marks, and the doctor's disappearance, is somehow connected to Iceland. He tells Honey to contact Ackler's colleagues, especially those who were involved in Becca's cancer treatment, to gather any information that could explain what's happening. Karsh wants to know if those strange circular marks on Becca's body were naturally formed, or if someone artificially implanted them for a purpose, just as he's beginning to fear. After that, Karsh meets with Maury again and asks if they've been able to locate the hackers' network. Maury shakes his head. No luck yet. He explains that the hackers are highly skilled, almost impossible to trace, which makes Karsh even more suspicious. Karsh begins to believe that all this might be the work of his corporate rivals, who are jealous of his advanced GraveTech technology. After all, such an innovation, allowing people to see inside graves in real time, would naturally attract both interest and envy. They probably wanted to copy his technology, which might be the reason all this had been done. After this, Maury suddenly asks Karsh a personal question. He wants to know if Karsh has ever been physically intimate with Terry, his ex-wife, since she's quite attractive and resembles Becca in every way, being her twin sister. Karsh immediately assures him that he has never done anything inappropriate and never will. After that, they both head outside to investigate the destroyed graves. As they examine the site, Karsh realizes that the graves seem to have been deliberately targeted, not randomly damaged. Most of them are perfectly fine, while only a few have been destroyed, including Becca's grave. While checking one of the graves, they notice tap marks on the optic cable, suggesting that someone had tapped into the system intentionally. Later that night, Karsh meets a woman named Suman, who is blind. She cannot see. Suman happens to be the wife of a powerful CEO, whose husband is terminally ill. Her husband had requested burial instead of cremation, and while looking for options, Suman came across Karsh's GraveTech program. She was fascinated by it, and now wanted to open a similar cemetery in Budapest using his technology. That night, back home, Karsh does something strange. He wraps himself in shrouds, the same kind used to cover the dead, just to experience what it might have felt like for Becca or for anyone else buried under his system. And in case you've forgotten, shrouds means burial cloth or coffin covering, essentially a coffin. He wanted to feel everything his wife once felt, even in death. His obsession with Becca had now crossed into complete madness, or what could only be called a psychological breakdown. Suddenly, Honey, his virtual assistant, appears on his monitor and interrupts him. She tells him that these devices are meant for the dead, not for the living. What he's doing is wrong. She also informs him that one of Dr. Acker's colleagues is ready to talk to him. The next day, Karsh meets that colleague and shows him the circular marks on Becca's skull, asking if they might be tracking devices. But the doctor assures him that they are nothing unusual, just normal post-mortem marks, and there's nothing to worry about. After saying this, the colleague leaves. A moment later, Karsh receives a message from Honey, which was actually sent by Suman. She's asking him to meet her immediately at a hotel for something important. The invitation feels odd, but Karsh decides to go without thinking too much. At the hotel, Suman initially discusses business matters, but then her tone changes. She gently touches Karsh's face and tries to get close to him. Her husband was on the verge of dying, and she was a young, lonely woman craving affection. She wanted to be intimate, and Karsh, despite himself, doesn't stop her. However, during their intimacy, Karsh begins to hallucinate Becca again. In his mind, he sees Becca lying in Suman's place. Only now, one of her breasts and one of her arms are missing, removed due to cancer. It becomes clear that no matter who he is with, Karsh can only see Becca. Her memory has consumed him so deeply that even in moments of passion or comfort, he sees her everywhere. In his hallucination, Becca also wears a collar device, something that constantly reminded her of small daily tasks, like a health tracker or medical reminder tool. Karsh sees this because he had actually given Becca such a collar when she was alive. It symbolizes his guilt and obsession. When Karsh snaps back to reality, he's still with Suman. She tells him bluntly not to trust Honey, his virtual assistant. According to her, Honey seems to be under someone else's control, or might have been reprogrammed to work against him. She warns that Honey could be leaking his private data and company secrets. Now, this could mean two things. Either Suman genuinely knows something, or she's manipulating him. It's possible that Suman, being the wife of the businessman, had her own motives. Maybe she wanted to steal or replicate GraveTech for her husband's company. Perhaps that's why she was trying to turn Karsh against Honey, creating distrust within his system. Anyway, the next day, Karsh is seen spending more time with Suman. He seems to enjoy her company, maybe because she reminds him of Becca, or maybe because he's desperate for emotional escape. While they're out together, Terry, Becca's twin sister, happens to run into them. Karsh introduces Suman to her politely, though there's a visible tension between the two women. That night, when Karsh returns home, he again begins hallucinating Becca. He simply cannot move on from her. In his vision, Becca starts talking to him again, saying strange, unsettling things. She tells him that Dr. Ackler is using parts of her body for a presentation in Iceland, and that she feels deeply connected to him, as if she can still feel those body parts being touched or moved. She even says that it makes her feel more alive. This deeply disturbs Karsh. He asks her, "What kind of presentation is this? What is it about?" Becca replies that it's too complicated to explain, and that he should ask Jerry. Karsh, confused, asks, "Who's Jerry?" Becca then reveals that Jerry is Dr. Ackler's first name. Dr. Ackler's first name, Jerry Ackler. Just then, Terry arrives at Karsh's house. They start talking, and Karsh finally asks her directly, "Was Becca having an affair with Dr. Jerry Ackler after your wedding?" After a long silence, Terry admits yes, it's true. Hearing this devastates Karsh. And now, everything starts to make sense. The hallucination where Becca said she could feel her body parts with Ackler wasn't just a dream. It was Karsh's subconscious confirming something he already suspected deep down, that his beloved Becca had been having an affair with Dr. Section Ackler. This revelation completely shatters him. Here, Karsh's subconscious mind finally hits him with the truth, that yes, Becca truly did feel happier with Dr. Ackler. And maybe, just maybe, Karsh had been neglecting her because of his work. That neglect might have been what pushed Becca toward Ackler, making her feel more understood and emotionally fulfilled with him. Their affair was probably born from that void. But after she died, Karsh realized just how deeply he loved her. And that realization came too late, turning his love into obsession and madness. Anyway, after facing this painful truth, Terry tries to comfort Karsh. And despite knowing they shouldn't, the two end up becoming intimate, because every time Karsh looks at Terry, he sees Becca's reflection in her face. She's her twin after all. He doesn't resist it, he doesn't stop himself. Afterward, feeling restless, Karsh goes straight to Maury, who had asked him to come over. Mari tells Karsh that the same strange circular marks found on Becca's body have also been found on other graves. This means something far bigger is going on. Mori hints that they'll soon uncover the truth behind everything. Ironically, Mori had earlier asked Karsh if he had ever been intimate with Terry, and now Karsh actually had. It shows that Mori already suspected both of them, and perhaps even set things up to expose them. Later, Karsh goes home and powers on Honey, his virtual assistant. But something's wrong. Honey starts behaving erratically, almost as if she's mimicking Becca's movements and voice, just like she used to appear in Karsh's dream. Terrified, Karsh shuts her down immediately. He recalls Suman's warning that Honey might be compromised or used against him. Furious and paranoid, he storms off to confront Mori, but Mori isn't there. As Karsh is leaving, he runs into Terry, who tells him she has something important to show him, a video she recorded. In that video, Terry is arguing violently with her ex-husband Mori. During the argument, Mori confesses that he was the one who sabotaged the cemetery system out of pure jealousy. He couldn't stand seeing Terry drawn toward Karsh, so he destroyed everything Karsh had built. It was his twisted revenge, born from envy and obsession. But that's not all. Mori was also behind the network hacking, hiring people to breach GraveTech's system. Now, everything makes sense. Suman was telling the truth all along. Mori had gone insane with jealousy, and he was controlling Honey remotely, using her as his tool for revenge. From this point, the story escalates quickly. The network is eventually restored, the cemetery repaired, but Mori disappears completely. No one knows where he went. Soon after, we see Karsh driving somewhere when he suddenly gets a phone call from Mori. Mori sounds terrified, begging Karsh to come meet him deep in the woods. Concerned, Karsh goes there, where Mori confesses everything. He admits that he hired Russian hackers, who later partnered with the Chinese to break into GraveTech's system. But when Mori refused to continue working with them, they cut off his fingers. And he even shows Karsh his mutilated hands. After hearing this horrifying confession, Karsh rushes to tell Terry everything. But Terry insists Mori is lying. She claims his fingers were already missing long before, and that he's only pretending now to cover up his crimes. She says he's using old wounds to make Karsh believe his story. Later that night, Karsh and Terry go to inspect the graves together. When they reach the cemetery, Karsh is shocked to find Dr. Jerry Ackler's grave right next to Becca's. Even more shocking, Ackler's skull has a deep wound, as if he had been murdered. Karsh is stunned, unable to believe what he's seeing. He immediately suspects that Mori might have done it out of revenge or madness. But deep inside, the audience, and perhaps Karsh himself, knows that it could have been Karsh who killed Ackler. Maybe when he discovered the truth about Becca's affair, he lost control and murdered him. Or maybe Ackler killed himself out of guilt. Either way, Mori remains the prime suspect, since his disappearance makes him an easy scapegoat. Still, it feels far more likely that Karsh himself is responsible, driven by jealousy and a fractured mind that can no longer distinguish love from obsession. His emotional breakdown has turned him into the very thing he feared, a man consumed by grief and rage. The story moves forward. Now Karsh is seen flying to Budapest with Suman, planning to expand GraveTech there and continue his work. They sit together on the plane, and as it takes off, Karsh looks at Suman, and for a brief, haunting moment, she appears exactly like Becca, with the same missing arm and breast. The hallucination returns. Suddenly, they kiss passionately. Suman whispers to him that from now on, they'll be together forever, buried side by side in the same grave in Budapest. The line is chilling, because this is exactly what Karsh had always wanted, to be buried with Becca. This final scene symbolically reveals the truth. Karsh never healed, no matter who he's with, Suman, Terry, or anyone else. He will always see Becca. His trauma, guilt, and obsession have fused with his mind so deeply that he's trapped in an endless psychological loop. Even if he builds new graves, new technology, or new relationships, he's still buried with Becca, mentally and emotionally. The love, guilt, and grief that once made him human have now become his eternal curse. And I believe Karsh also felt that his wife's tragic death was a form of punishment for betraying him, that her infidelity had somehow cursed her with cancer, leading to such a painful end. But the most terrifying part of all this wasn't just his obsession. It was the technology he created. Karsh had invented a system that used AI-powered shrouds with built-in microcamera, buried inside graves so that people could watch their loved ones even after death. I hope you've understood this mind-twisting story completely. If you did, make sure to smash that like button. Let's aim for 800 likes for this dark and haunting explanation. And hey, if you love deep, mysterious, and thought-provoking stories like this one, don't forget to subscribe.